I never thought the day would come when my own child would decide my life for me. Not ask. Not explain. Just decide. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when I found out my car was gone. Not stolen. Sold. I stood at the front window of my small Rhode Island house, coffee cooling in my hands, staring at the empty driveway. The crack in the pavement where oil used to drip from my old blue sedan looked like an open wound. At first, I thought maybe I'd forgotten something. Old age does that to people, they say. But my keys were still on the hook. My purse was on the chair. And my heart already knew. I called my daughter. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Where's my car?" No reply. That car wasn't just transportation. It was freedom. It was my weekly grocery trips, my doctor appointments, my Sunday church mornings, my quiet drives by the ocean when the house felt too empty. That car carried my independence. And she took it. When she finally called back, her voice was irritated, as if I were inconveniencing her. "Oh, Mom," she sighed. "I sold it yesterday." The mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the kitchen floor. "You, what?" I whispered. "You don't really need it anymore," she said casually. "You barely drive. And we needed the money." "We." She always said we when it benefited her. "That was my car," I said. She laughed. A short, dismissive laugh. "Relax. You can walk. Or take the bus. You're not helpless." Helpless. That word burned deeper than the broken glass under my feet. I had raised her alone after her father passed. Worked 2 jobs. Missed meals so she could eat. And now, I was an inconvenience. "You didn't even ask me," I said. "I didn't think I had to," she replied. "I'm your daughter." I closed my eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt louder without the hum of the car engine returning me home. I replayed memories. Teaching her to ride a bike. Driving her to her first job interview. Waiting in that same car while she took her driving test. All those years. And now she took the keys to my life. The next morning, I woke up early. Earlier than usual. My knees ached. My back protested. But I got dressed anyway. Because I had an appointment. And no ride. I stepped outside with my purse. No car. No ride. No apology. I started walking. Barefoot. Because in her rush to control my life, she'd forgotten one thing. She had sold my car, but she had no idea what else she had set in motion. As my feet hit the cold pavement, something inside me hardened. Not anger. Not revenge. Resolve. Because if she thought taking my car made me powerless, she was about to learn the truth. Where things begin to shift. She thought she took my independence. But what she really did was wake something dangerous. By the time I reached the end of my street, my feet were already numb. The pavement was cold, unforgiving. Each step sent a sharp reminder up my legs that I was no longer young. That time had left its marks on me in quiet, permanent ways. But I kept walking. Not because I was strong, but because stopping felt worse. I passed houses where I'd once been welcomed. Neighbors who used to wave now pretended not to see me. An old woman walking barefoot at dawn made people uncomfortable. It reminded them of something they didn't want to face. Vulnerability. I reached the bus stop and sat on the bench, my purse on my lap, my coat pulled tight around me. When the bus arrived, the driver looked down at my feet and hesitated. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I nodded. "I will be." He didn't ask more questions. Sometimes kindness comes in the form of silence. At the clinic, the nurse noticed immediately. "Where are your shoes?" she asked softly. I smiled, the kind of smile you learn after years of swallowing explanations. "I left in a hurry." She didn't press. She brought me a pair of disposable socks and a cup of warm water. I held that cup like it was something precious. Because it was. When I returned home hours later, exhausted and sore, my phone was buzzing. Missed calls. Texts. All from my daughter. Why aren't you answering? Mom, where are you? This isn't funny. Funny. I lowered myself into the armchair by the window and stared at the wall where a family photo still hung. Her smile in that picture looked different now. Sharper. Less innocent. I finally texted back. I walked. That was all. She showed up an hour later. Angry. Defensive. Righteous. You embarrassed me, she snapped the moment she stepped inside. My friend saw you near the clinic. Barefoot. Mom. Do you know how that makes me look? I looked up at her slowly. How it makes you look. I repeated. She crossed her arms. You could have called me. You always make things dramatic. Something inside me went quiet. Not numb. Clear. I raised you, I said evenly. Do you remember that? She rolled her eyes. This again. I worked nights. I skipped meals. I sold my jewelry to keep the lights on. And you sold my car without asking. She shrugged. It was just a car. Just a car. I stood up, steadying myself against the chair. That car was my freedom. And you took it because you decided I didn't need a life anymore. Her face hardened. You're old, Mom. Things change. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. They do. She left in a storm of irritation, slamming the door behind her. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel small after she walked away. I felt awake. That night, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in a long time. Inside were documents. Old papers. Things I'd kept without fully understanding why. Only that something told me not to let them go. Titles. Receipts. Agreements. I spread them across the table, my hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from recognition. Because somewhere along the way, I had forgotten who I was. But the papers remembered. The car she sold. It wasn't just mine. It was registered in my name alone. And the money from the sale? Legally mine. I made a call. Then another. By midnight, things were already moving. The next morning, my daughter texted me again. I need help. I'm late for work. Can you order me a ride? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied. You can walk. I watched from the window as she stormed down the driveway, shoes in her hand because she couldn't find the other pair. Her heels snapped against the pavement. Her phone was pressed to her ear, complaining loudly to someone who wasn't listening. For the first time, our roles were reversed. And she didn't like it. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. But deep inside, something settled. A balance. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. And she was about to learn what it cost when you forget where you came from. The truth comes out. Not just about the car, but about everything she thought she controlled. The house felt different after that morning. Quieter. Not empty, just honest. I sat at the kitchen table with sunlight spilling across the old wood, the stack of papers still laid out in front of me like pieces of a life I had once lived and slowly tucked away. 4 years, I had been surviving. Now, I was remembering. My daughter didn't come home that evening. She didn't text. Didn't call. And for the first time, I didn't chase her silence. I cooked myself a simple dinner, ate slowly, and washed my plate like I had all the time in the world. Because suddenly, I did. The next day, I received a call from the dealership. The man sounded uncomfortable. Ma'am, we've had an issue with the vehicle your daughter sold yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. Oh. There's a lien attached. A legal claim. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said calmly. That would be mine. You see, years ago, when her father was still alive, we had taken out a small personal loan. Not for luxury. Not for fun. For survival. Medical bills. Funeral costs. Keeping a roof over our heads. The car had been listed as collateral. I never told my daughter. Not because I was hiding anything, but because children don't always need to carry adult burdens. And now, she had sold something that was never fully hers to give away. The dealership paused. So, the funds from the sale legally belong to you. I know, I said softly. By noon, the money was back where it belonged. My account. My name. My choice. That afternoon, my daughter burst through the front door like a storm. "What did you do?" she shouted. I was folding laundry on the couch. "I folded towels," I replied. She stared at me, furious. "The dealership called me. They said the money was reversed. My rent is due, Mom." I placed the towel neatly on the pile and looked up. "You sold my car," I said evenly. "Without asking." She paced the room, hands in her hair. "I needed that money. And I needed respect," I replied. She stopped pacing. "You're being selfish," she snapped. The word hit me, but it didn't wound me, because I finally recognized it for what it was. Fear. "You've lived in this house rent-free for years," I continued calmly. "Used my credit, my name, my patience." She scoffed. "That's what parents do." I stood. "No," I said quietly. "That's what parents do until children forget they're not entitled to everything." Her face flushed red. "You'd really let me struggle?" I stepped closer. "You let me walk barefoot to the clinic." Silence crashed between us. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually do anything." And there it was. The truth. She never thought I would push back. I didn't either, I admitted. Not until you took my wheels. That night, she packed a bag. Not because I asked her to leave, but because the power had shifted, and she couldn't stand it. She stood by the door, eyes glossy. "You're choosing money over me," she said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "I'm choosing myself." The door closed behind her. And for the first time in decades, the house felt like mine again. Days passed. Then a week. Then another. I heard through relatives that she was struggling. Walking to work. Borrowing rides. Complaining loudly about how unfair life had become. Some called me heartless. Some said I'd gone too far. I listened. Then I went back to living. I bought new shoes. Comfortable ones. I scheduled my appointments. I started taking the bus downtown, not because I had to, but because I wanted to see the city again. I remembered how to exist without apologizing. One afternoon, I received a message. A single sentence. "I didn't realize how much you did for me." I stared at the screen. Then typed back. "Neither did you." That wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was awareness. And awareness is where consequences begin. Because chapter 4? That's when she learned that taking someone's independence doesn't just cost money. It costs trust. It costs comfort. And sometimes, it costs the illusion that someone will always save you. She came back on a Tuesday. Not in anger. Not in confidence. In exhaustion. I knew it was her before I opened the door. Not because of the knock, but because of the pause between them. 3 light taps. A hesitation. Then one more, almost apologetic. I took a breath and opened it. She looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Her shoes were worn thin. Her hair pulled back too tight. Dark circles rested beneath eyes that had finally learned what it meant to be tired without a safety net. She didn't meet my gaze at first. "Hi, Mom." I stepped aside. "Come in." She stood in the living room like a guest, not a daughter. Hands clasped. Shoulders slightly hunched. The house hadn't changed. She had. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly. I nodded. "I know." That answer surprised her. She blinked. "You do." Yes, I said. Because the world is loud when it stops cushioning you. She sat on the edge of the couch like she wasn't sure she deserved the comfort. I've been walking everywhere, she admitted. 5 miles to work. 5 back. I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because sometimes silence teaches better than sympathy. I got blisters, she added, voice cracking. I cried in the bathroom at work so no one would see. That did something to me. I won't lie. I turned away for a moment, pretending to straighten a picture frame. When I spoke again, my voice was steady. Did you think about me? I asked gently. She swallowed. Yes. She looked up then. I thought about you walking to the clinic. Barefoot. I didn't even ask if you were okay. I returned to my chair and sat across from her. No, I agreed. You didn't. Tears filled her eyes. Real ones this time. Not frustration. Not manipulation. Regret. I thought, because you're my mom, you'd always just figure it out, she whispered. I leaned forward. That belief, I said softly, is what broke us. She nodded, crying openly now. I was wrong. We sat like that for a long moment. No hugging. No dramatic forgiveness. Just truth sitting between us like a fragile thing. I'm not here to ask for money, she said quickly. Or the car. I just needed to say that. I studied her face. Thank you, I replied. That matters. She hesitated. Can I stay for a few days? She asked. Just until I get back on my feet? I inhaled slowly. Yes, I said. With boundaries. She nodded instantly. Anything. And that's when I laid them out. You contribute, I said. You ask before using what isn't yours. You speak to me with respect. She nodded after each one, like she was writing them down in her heart. And one more thing, I added. She looked up. You will walk, not because I want you to suffer, I said. But because you need to remember what it feels like to rely on yourself. She hesitated, then nodded. I understand. The days that followed were quiet. Different. She woke early. Left quietly. Came home tired. She cooked dinner twice. Did the dishes without being asked. One night, she left a note on the counter. Thank you for letting me stay. I won't forget this. I kept it. One evening, as we folded laundry together, she spoke. I didn't realize how invisible you felt, she said. I thought being strong meant you didn't need anything. I smiled sadly. That's the lie many women are taught, I replied. She looked at me then, really looked. Not as a resource. Not as a backup plan. But as a person. I didn't give her the car back. Not yet. I didn't offer money. Not yet. She packed her bag on a Sunday morning. Not dramatically. No slammed drawers. No angry sighs. Just quiet intention. I watched from the kitchen doorway as she folded her clothes neatly, slower than she used to, like she'd learned that rushing often leads to mistakes. I found a place closer to work, she said without looking up. A room. Small but, it's mine. I nodded. That's good. She zipped the bag, then hesitated. I didn't want to leave without saying something, she said. I waited. I used to think independence meant doing whatever I wanted, she began. Now I know it means taking responsibility for the consequences. I felt something loosen in my chest. She reached into her pocket and placed something on the table. A folded piece of paper. I wrote this for you. I opened it later. I'll tell you what it said soon. Before she left, she stood barefoot in the doorway. Still no car. Still walking. But different. Thank you for not rescuing me, she said quietly. You taught me something I couldn't learn any other way. I nodded. You taught me something too. She smiled. What's that? That love doesn't mean silence. After she left, The house felt full, not empty. That surprised me. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Then a month. She called every Sunday. Sometimes to ask advice. Sometimes just to talk. Once she said, "I walked past a dealership today." I didn't respond. "I didn't go in," she added quickly. "Not because I couldn't, but because I wanted to earn it." I smiled into the phone. One evening, she knocked again. This time, she wasn't tired. She was proud. "I saved enough," she said, holding out an envelope. "Not for the car, for you." Inside was cash. Rent money. Groceries. Repayment. I didn't take it. But I didn't push it away either. "We'll put it in a savings account," I said. "For your future." Her eyes filled. A week later, I handed her the car keys. Not as forgiveness. As acknowledgement. "You didn't ask," I said. "That's why you've earned them." She cried. I didn't. Because this wasn't about pain anymore. It was about growth. Remember the note she left? This is what it said. "I thought you were strong because you never said no. Now I know you're strong because you finally did. I keep it in my drawer. Here's the truth I want you to take with you. Love without boundaries becomes entitlement. Boundaries without love become punishment. But when you combine both, you raise adults, not dependents. If you've ever been taken for granted, if someone crossed a line and called it love, if you finally said no and felt guilty for it, this story is for you. Where are you watching from? I'd love to know. If this story touched you, like, share, and subscribe, because more stories like this deserve to be told. And remember, sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone walk barefoot until they learn how to stand.